The day at the pharmacy began the way small humiliations always do, politely, with fluorescent lights too bright for honesty and a line that moved like it had better things to do than carry me along. I stood there with my handbag tucked under my arm, the one with the soft creak like a yawn when the zipper opens, a paper prescription folded in thirds, my doctor's curled signature shining like a fishhook at the bottom. The air smelled of rubbing alcohol and cinnamon gum. A young mother bounced a baby who was determined to swallow her own fist. An older man argued quietly with a blood pressure machine that announced his numbers aloud like a town crier. It felt like the waiting room of life, everyone suspended, everyone behaving. My name flickered onto the overhead screen in green letters. Mabel Hart, counter 2. I stepped forward. The girl behind the counter looked up with the smile of someone being measured on her smiling. She had eyebrows like punctuation, and a lanyard dotted with enamel pins. Tiny rainbows, a cat wearing glasses. Be kind. Picking up or dropping off today, Miss Hart? She asked. Her voice was sweet, like cereal milk. Picking up, I said. I slid the paper across. There should be a refill for my lisinopril and a new prescription for the breathing nebulizer. The doctor had explained the difference between brand and generic to me twice. I had written it down anyway. When you've fallen once in a grocery store aisle and had strangers lift you by your elbows like you're a loose plank, you learn to write things down instead of trusting the memory other people think you no longer have. She typed. The keys made a papery sound, not like the old clack of my husband's typewriter, but like secrets being gently stacked. I see the lisinopril, she said. But the nebulizer solution is... Her eyes flicked from the monitor to me and back. We don't have that one in stock. We can order, but it'll take a week. A week? The prescription had urgent underlined in my doctor's neat hand. The wheezing, he said, to start tonight. The last 2 nights had been like sleeping through a straw. I'd sat up in bed, timing my breaths to the slow red blink of the neighbor's porch light. I'd thought of Frank and his good lungs, and how he used to whistle to the kettle just before it boiled. Funny, the sounds you remember when your body forgets how to do an easy thing. The girl leaned in until I could see my reflection inside her pupils. A tiny, careful woman, framed and tired. I'm sorry, ma'am. Supply chain issues, you know. I turned to the side where a wire rack held little plastic cards that said, "We care," in sharp, cheerful letters. Behind the counter, shelves of white bottles waited like identical, obedient soldiers. Is there an alternative? I asked. Different strength? Different brand? She typed again. Somewhere, a printer coughed. We do have a brand name ampule, she said at last, but it's not covered by your plan. Cash price is $212. $212, I repeated. Sometimes the right way to evaluate a number is to hear your own mouth. Try to carry it. She nodded. I can pay cash today, I said finally. I can't wait a week. I took out my small wallet. The leather had softened over 30 years into the texture of a river stone. I counted out the bills carefully, the way I count pills into the Sunday through Saturday box, touching each one with 2 fingers, straightening the corners, a choreography of care. When I slid the money across, the girl hesitated, as if the bills might bite. She glanced over her shoulder at the pharmacist, a man with shoulders like a hanger and hair shaved too close to have anything to say. He looked up, looked through me, and nodded. The girl took the cash. Her nails were painted a pale pink that made her hands look unbruised by life. I'll go ask the pharmacist to prepare it, she said. Give me a few minutes, okay? Okay, I said. I stepped to the side and watched the machine that counted pills, the way a child watches a washing machine, mesmerized by the spin you can't stop. Minutes stretched. The mother with the fist-eating baby rocked and hummed a lullaby I used to sing to Carl when he had croup. Hush, little baby, don't say a word. I sang inside my mouth without sound. A teenager bought a protein shake and a packet of gum, with the bored arrogance of someone who doesn't yet believe in endings. Miss Hart? The pharmacist called my name himself. His smile didn't have the girl's training. It was thin, like a drawstring pulled too tight. Yes? He cleared his throat. There's an issue with your prescription. My doctor faxed it over an hour ago, I said. It's urgent. He folded his arms. Right, but the brand name manufacturer has issued a new policy. They're limiting quantity for patients over 70, unless there's a special authorization on file. No authorization, no dispense. Can't sell it cash. Behind me, the world hushed. The little ones, even, seemed to quiet like the air knew when it had been asked to carry something heavy. I just paid, I said, my voice calmer than my blood. He shrugged with one shoulder, a small arrogance. We'll refund you to the card. It was cash. Then store credit, he said. You can use it on other items. I didn't come for candy or shampoo. Ma'am, he said. And there it was, the word that begins 1,000 tiny denials. Old people don't need this medicine as much as they think. It's often anxiety, not asthma. Let's not overmedicate, okay? We're protecting you. He said it like he'd been waiting to say it all day. He said it like a kindness he couldn't be bothered to make sound like one. The sentence split something cleanly in me. Not with heat, not with the fire I might have felt at 50, not with the sudden tears people expect from a woman with soft shoes. It split me in the cold way a good knife splits an apple, decisive, without remorse. I didn't say a word at first. I took a breath, one of the ragged ones, steadying my voice against it. So, to be clear, I said in the tone I used to use when a contractor tried to sell me a furnace I didn't need, you took my cash, and now you're refusing to fill the prescription my doctor wrote because you've decided I'm too old to need it, and you will not return my money. He glanced above me to the ceiling as if someone up there might jump in and save him from his own words. Store policy, he said. We can put it on your customer account. If you want. I don't want your points, I said. I want my breath. The girl flinched. The pharmacist rolled his chair back without moving his legs, drifting like a lazy boat. Next, he called. I stood there a moment longer, long enough to count 212 reasons to keep standing. Then I turned and walked away. Not because I was finished, because I was beginning. Outside, the afternoon was thin and bright, winter sun slanting like it had somewhere else to be. I walked slowly to the car, one hand around the handle of my bag, the other around the small nebula of anger I could feel inside my chest, expanding and contracting like a second, younger heart. At home, I made coffee in my smallest pot and sat at the oak table by the south window, the table with a dent the size of Carl's first tooth, because he banged a spoon there to make me laugh. I took out a yellow pad, the kind with a green margin at the top, and wrote, in neat, slow capitals, the day they tried to take my breath. Underneath, I made a list. Call Dr. Loomis. Ask for alternative plus urgent prior auth. Call insurance plan. Ask for coverage override. Document names. File complaint. Board of Pharmacy. Note names, date, words. Bank. Remove helpers from accounts and cards. Attorney. Review POA. Update will. Consider trust. Pharmacy transfer. Independent place on Monroe Ave. Kay said, they're kind. Breathing. Tea. Steam. Sit upright. Write anyway. I wrote this because I've learned that writing is a kind of oxygen. Ink is a quiet defiance. If you put a thing on paper, it has to look you in the eye. I called Dr. Loomis first. His nurse, Raquel, answered. She has a voice soft as socked footsteps. I told her what had happened in simple sentences, the way truth prefers to be told. She went very still at the other end, like a pond listening. I'm so sorry, Mabel, she said. That's not policy. That's prejudice. She said she would fax the prior authorization within the hour. Stat underlined because sometimes you have to speak hospital for humans to move. Next, I called the insurance number on the back of my card. I spelled my name twice. I answered security questions about the make and model of my first car, as if knowing those things proved I deserved oxygen. The representative put me on hold to consult policy and then came back with a voice that sounded like she had straightened in her chair. "I've documented your account," she said carefully. "You are authorized for the brand medication for 30 days pending supplier availability. We'll note the barrier at Pharmacy X. If you need an immediate fill, I can locate an independent pharmacy who has stock." "Monroe Avenue?" I asked. "Monroe Avenue," she confirmed. Someone somewhere had heard my list. Then I called the supermarket pharmacy and asked for the manager. A new voice came on, higher, brittle. "You can file a complaint online," she said, "but I should warn you, he's our most experienced pharmacist." "I'm sure he is," I said. "Experience isn't the same as judgment. You're raising your voice." "No," I said gently. "I am calibrating yours." The line clicked. She had hung up. Good, I thought. We're finished trying to make this soft. I dialed the number for the State Board of Pharmacy. A woman named June answered. She sounded like someone who had seen everything twice. I told her the story without salt or sugar. She asked for the names. I gave them. She asked for times. I had them. She asked what exactly he had said. And I told her a pharmacist in a clean coat told me, "Old people don't need this medicine as much as they think. It's often anxiety." She exhaled a sound that wasn't quite a sigh. "We take said ended cases very seriously," she said. "You'll have an email from me before 5. We'll need a written statement. Do not return there. I'll also flag your complaint to the insurer's fraud and waste unit regarding the cash." "Fraud?" "If they refuse to dispense and won't refund cash," she said, "that's theft draped in policy." After I hung up, I made tea with honey. Not because it helps, but because ritual does. I sat there a while, looking at the corner where Frank's photo lives. He's wearing the sweater I knit in the winter when the furnace hiccuped and the walls cried briefly before settling back into their stoic patience. "Can you believe?" I asked his picture. The audacity of a boy telling a woman who raised a son through the long December of layoffs and chemo and mortgage adjustments that she doesn't need to breathe? Frank didn't answer the way dead husbands don't. But the air in the kitchen felt slightly more on my side. Then I did something I had been postponing for months, not because I didn't know, but because knowing has a cost the way necessary medicine has. I pulled out the fireproof lockbox from the hall closet and set it on the table. The contents were familiar. Documents with borders, papers with words that weigh more than other words, a key that no longer belongs to anything but memory. I took out the power of attorney document I'd signed 3 years ago after my fall. At the time, Carl had stood across this very table, his eyes shiny with good intentions and ignorance. "Just in case, Mom," he'd said. "We'll never abuse it. They never intend to, I think. That's what makes it so easy." I called Lena my steady voice in legal matters. She used to be a neighbor's neighbor, someone you waved to across the aisle at church, and then one day you find yourself in her office with a stack of paper and an apology you don't owe anyone. "Come tomorrow at 10, she said. "Bring everything. We'll turn the locks on your life back over to you." This is what I want to tell you about turning 68. People begin to talk to you like your name is Sweetie, and your opinions are icing. And if you don't anchor yourself to the floor of your own knowing, they will move the furniture around you and call it necessary. You don't have to be bitter to be immovable. You just have to decide that your breath, literal and otherwise, belongs first to you. By 3, June's email came through. I wrote my statement in one sitting. I have always had a good memory for sentences that try to erase me. I sent it back and immediately received an automatic reply telling me my ticket number was 4,419. I wrote that number in the margin of my list and circled it. Numbers like that want to be seen. At 4:30, Raquel called to say the prior auth had been approved and that the independent pharmacy on Monroe Avenue had my medication waiting by 5 if I could make it. They'll even show you how to use their nebulizer in the counseling room, she said. They don't like to assume anyone knows just because they look like they should. I put on my coat. The zipper stuck for a second, like it was considering whether I was the kind of woman who followed through. "We're going," I told it. I tucked my list into my purse. I won't pretend the drive was dramatic. It was the small kind of brave. No one writes songs about a woman obeying all the speed limits and every one of her instincts. The independent pharmacy was 3 blocks before the laundromat, where I used to pin socks together to save myself the loneliness of mismatched endings. The bell over the door did not sound like a bell. It sounded like a tiny laugh. The woman behind the counter was my age. She wore a cardigan with elbow patches and the expression of someone not easily impressed but easily moved. "Picking up from his heart?" "Yes," I said, surprised to be pre-recognized. "Mabel Hart. We got the call from Dr. Loomis," she said. "We're set." She glanced at the computer, then at me. "Before I hand this over, would you like to breathe it here the first time? Makes some folks less anxious." I wanted to say, according to a man in a white coat, people my age don't get anxious. We imagine oxygen. Instead, I nodded. "Yes, please." She led me to a small room with a chair that didn't wobble and a poster of lungs on the wall that looked like the last, most honest tree of winter. She showed me the ampules, the machine, the mask. She didn't rush. She didn't assume I had done this as many times as the wrinkles around my eyes suggested I might have. She attached the tubing and said, "We'll do the first one together, okay?" The way a friend might say, "Let's cross this street." By the time I left, the sun was giving its last coins to the tops of the maples. My chest felt less crowded. The roar of the world had quieted enough for small sounds to return. The click of my turn signal, the whisper of the radio as it failed to find a station, and then, just at the edge of the neighborhood, the sound I wish I could say I imagined, the beginning of God's own orchestra geese, threading the sky like a sentence that refuses to end in the middle. At home, I heated soup. I ate it standing at the counter with a spoon that belonged to my mother. My phone pinged a message from Carl. "Hey, Mom," it began, which is how people begin when they want you to be softer than they intend to be. "Heard you were at the pharmacy today. Jody says you might have overreacted. She saw a post in the neighborhood group. Can we talk before you make it a big deal? We don't need drama right now." Overreacted. The word sat down on my kitchen chair without asking. I looked at the clock. Then I looked at the lamp, at the old crack along the plaster, at the woman in the window's reflection who was not the young mother he remembers, not the woman who measured the distance between a fever and a kiss. I wrote back only 2 words. "Not tonight." I slept that night like a slow tide. No dreams. Just the steady in and out of a body doing its quiet work. The next morning, I dressed in the navy slacks that never wrinkle, and the cardigan with the mother-of-pearl buttons that feel like thin moons. When you are about to take back what you gave away too cheaply, you put on buttons and you button them all. Lena's office smelled like new paper, a smell you can't fake. She hugged me. She is not a hugging woman, which is why it mattered. We spread my documents across her desk like maps. "Power of attorney first," I said. "Revoke it. Today." She nodded. "We'll file the revocation now. I'll notarize." She slid papers toward me with a pen that wrote like a brook in spring. "We'll also update your healthcare proxy," she added casually. "No chance for helpful adult children to speak over you in a white room while a stranger writes it all down." We moved through the rest like a small army with better hair. Bank account authorizations canceled. Beneficiaries moved. Will updated. Trust drafted with a clear instruction that what remains goes where. Hands have been honestly open. The women's shelter on Greenway, the senior clinic that triple checks every copay at the counter and writes receipts with pens that never run out. The library that still lets you whisper to your favorite chair. When we were finished, my hand ached a little from signing my own name. It felt good, like a muscle you forgot could still lift. On the way home, I stopped at First Mutual. A young teller with a shaved head and a ring through his eyebrow smiled the way people smile at women my age when they hope we will say something wise so they can go home and tell the exact story to someone they're trying to impress. "I'd like a manager," I said, "to update authorized users and remove a cosigner." Words matter. Remove. Not consider or perhaps or hey there, quick question. Remove. In the office, with the glass walls and the plant pretending it was a jungle, the manager looked from the screen to me and back. "We'll need to verify identity," she said. "You will," I said, handing her my license, my passport, my voter registration card. I do not hand those 3 to just anyone. When I slid them across, I felt the weight of my own government name settle back into my palm like a bird that has remembered where home is. We removed Carl and Jody from everything, but the family phone plan left that for last on purpose. I wanted to make that call when I could hear their silence arrive. "Would you like a new card?" the manager asked. "And new online logins?" "Both," I said. "And new security questions." Nothing a child or a best friend could answer even if they decided to try. Back home, I made a pot roast because strength isn't all signatures and statements. Sometimes it's meat you can cut with the side of a spoon. The house filled with the smell of onions softening into something you wish you could wear as a perfume. Kay from next door came by with her stepladder to borrow a cup of sugar and left with a bowl of stew and my promise to finally attend the poetry night she's been mentioning for a year. "You look taller," she said at the door. "I am," I said, surprised to hear it out loud. When the phone rang at 7, I was ready for it. Carl's name lit the screen like a warning flare in a childhood drawing all at once. "I talked to Jody," he said without hello. "She's furious you tried to get that pharmacist fired. He's been there for 10 years. Everyone loves him." "I didn't try to get anyone fired," I said. "I tried to make sure the next woman who looks like me gets to breathe." "Mom," he exhaled, the way he used to when he was 8, and I made him apologize to Mrs. Collins for stealing almond joys from her Halloween bowl. "You're making things bigger than they are." "They are big," I said. "They are exactly as big as our lungs. You didn't have to report him. You could have waited a week. Or you could have called me for a ride. There are 100 ways I could have made myself small enough to fit your comfort, Carl," I said. I'm tired of being clever at shrinking. There was a long silence, like the phone had become a lake, and we were both waiting to see if the stone we had thrown would show a ripple. "I heard you changed the bank," he said eventually. "I did." "You didn't warn me." "There's a difference between warning and asking permission," I said. "I'm not doing either." "You're punishing us," he said. The word "us" was a blanket he kept trying to drape over his own shoulders. "I'm protecting me," I said. "And if that feels like punishment, you might want to ask why." He hung up without saying goodbye. The sound of it reminded me of a door closing down the hall in a hotel where you're not the only guest. Brief, impersonal, decisive. The next day, another email from June. "Your complaint has moved to investigation. There will be an unannounced audit. Please keep all receipts." I laughed out loud in my kitchen. Receipts are a hobby. Proof is a love language. That afternoon, I did something I never would have thought to do even a year ago. I called the Consumer Watch segment of the local news. "If you need a story that isn't sensational but is systemic," I said to the cheerful intern who answered the phone, "I have one. It won't get you viral. It might get someone's grandmother her breath." 2 days later, a reporter named Camila came to my house with a camera boy, who wasn't a boy at all, and asked me to tell the story from the beginning. We sat at my table because kitchens are the only places people tell the truth without being coaxed. She listened without interrupting, the way my mother used to when I confessed to breaking the handle of her favorite pot. After I finished, she asked, "What did it feel like when he said, 'Old people don't need this medicine'?" It was a good question. You can respect the person who asks a good question. It felt like someone walked into my kitchen, opened the window, and said, "Air is wasted on you," I said. It felt like a hand on the top of my head pressing. They ran the story the next night at 6:22, sandwiched between snowfall totals and a segment about a dog who rides a skateboard. They blurred the pharmacist's face because we live in a world that is too gentle with the casual harm men do in white coats and too rough on the women who notice. But they did not blur his words. Jody texted me after it aired. "You've embarrassed the family. My friends shop there. You've shamed a respected professional on TV." I set the phone face down beside my plate and ate the last of the pot roast. After dinner, I texted back, "Air is not a luxury product. Neither is dignity." Then I blocked her number. Sometimes you have to make the silence yourself. On Thursday, Ruby, 16 now, taller than my worry, knocked on my door. She's Jody's daughter by biology and my granddaughter by the law of unbreakable small kindnesses. She came alone. She stood on the porch in a sweatshirt 2 sizes too big and a face too young for the apology it was carrying. "Grandma," she said, "I saw the news. I heard Mom. I'm sorry. I'm not here because they sent me." She lifted a plastic bag. "I brought cookies. I didn't bake them. I'm not going to pretend I did." "You brought yourself," I said. "Sit." We sat at the kitchen table with the cookies and 2 mugs of tea. She told me she'd been drawing more, that her art teacher says she has a good eye for truth, a phrase I wanted to embroider on everything she owns. "Dad says you overreacted," she said finally. "Mom says you made it bigger than it was. I think it was exactly the right size. I think you made the room fit the truth instead of the other way around." I watched her mouth form those careful lines. I thought of how many mothers and grandmothers had swallowed sentences like that to keep the peace, and how the peace had never earned our quiet. "I'm proud of you," she said suddenly, as if the words had sprung a little leak and escaped before she knew it. "I closed my eyes the way you do when a good note lands just right. Can I come by just me, sometimes? Even if Mom's mad?" "You can come by," I said, "but I'm not sneaking you in. The door's the door." She grinned. "I can walk through doors." After she left, I took out a new notebook. On the first page I wrote, in my mother's neat script as best as I could remember it, "I will not confuse soft with silence." Under it, I wrote another list. Not what to do, what to stop doing. Stop giving the benefit of the doubt to people who have cashed it out. Stop calling my needs drama because someone else does. Stop pretending the pharmacist is a priest. Stop paying for the family phone plan. That last one I circled. The next morning, I called the phone company, navigated a maze of robotic kindness, and reached a woman named Valerie, whose voice could knit a scarf. "I'd like to remove the 2 additional lines," I said, effective immediately. She hesitated, as if she had been taught to talk people out of their decisions. "They'll lose service, Miss Hart." "They'll gain adulthood," I said. "It's a fair trade." From there, the week became a steady drum. The board emailed again to say an inspector had visited and that policy retraining had begun. It is a pretty phrase for a thing that should be simpler. Don't steal and don't starve someone of air. Dr. Loomis called to check on my lungs. We adjusted the plan. I learned the rhythm of the machine, the way the mist kisses the back of the throat before the body remembers what to do. I learned to sit up straighter when I'm breathing and lean forward when I'm telling the truth. It helps both kinds of exhale find their way out. Saturday morning, I held a little seminar at the library. It wasn't official. It started because I was telling Kay and Ida and Nora over tea that we should not have to memorize prices to catch the ways they slide under the full cost of us. "Let's make a handout," I said. "Let's make a plan." We reserved the small conference room with the good light and told our friends and told their friends and brought a box of donuts because sugar can make courage less shy. I stood at the front with a marker I'd borrowed from the children's section and wrote on the board, "How to keep your breath and your cash. A guide for the very much alive." Then I wrote in 4 neat columns, questions to ask at the counter, itemized prices, cash versus insurance, in-stock alternatives, numbers to call Board of Pharmacy, plan, doctor, local consumer reporter, why not? Words to insist on refund, receipt, policy, justification in writing. Sentences you are allowed to say, with your whole chest, I will wait while you call your manager. I will stand here until you refund the money you are pretending belongs to you. You are not a doctor. We laughed. We practiced. We role-played the word no like it was a new dance step. Awkward at first, then smoother, then good. A woman named Lila cried quietly in the second row. Afterward, she told me her husband had died in a waiting room in a different kind of white coat place. And the nurse had said he was old, like that was a reason not to run. They slowed down, she whispered. I saw it happen. We put our palms together on the table, a little circle of women whose hearts had outlived so many things, and we said the names of the ones who should have had one more breath. We did not say them like ghosts. We said them like instructions. On Sunday, a letter came from the chain pharmacy, corporate letterhead, the kind of legal font that thinks Times New Roman is a personality. We regret your experience, it began, which is how people apologize when they would like to keep their salary and their illusions. We will be conducting additional training to ensure staff use appropriate language when counseling elderly patients. Elderly. It's not the word I would choose, but there I am. Not young, not finished. Elderly like a tree. Rings deep, roots unafraid of wind. I held the letter over the trash can. Then I put it in a folder labeled History and slid it behind the trust papers and the new healthcare proxy like a cautionary tale that knows its place. Carl did not call all week. Jody did not text because blocked numbers make their own good luck. Ruby stopped by twice. The second time, she brought a sketch. It was me at the library, marker in hand, chin raised. She had drawn the machine mist as a kind of soft cloud around my head, like breath made visible. Underneath, she had written, in her small, sure handwriting, "Still here." "Can I hang it?" I asked. "In the kitchen," she said, "where you decide things." We put it beside the list of emergency numbers and the calendar that says poetry night twice a month in blue ink. She stayed for soup. We talked about a boy who thought he was in love with the idea of her, and an art teacher who told her to turn her face toward the light even when her subject is darkness. "I never liked that," she said. "Why avoid the shadows? They are part of what makes it a face." "It's not about avoiding," I said. "It's about not worshiping them. If you wanted to and use Cation," she laughed. "You should come be a guest speaker," she said. "About what?" I asked. "Composition," she grinned, "of lives." The board's final letter came 2 weeks later. They used all the right words: violation, failure to refund, age-based discriminatory language, corrective action. It didn't name the man. It named the store. We will be conducting a compliance check in 6 months. 6 months is a long time when you are counting in-breaths. But it is also the exact right length of time for a small, necessary, ordinary revolution to come to live at a countertop. The same day, a check arrived in a different envelope, the kind with perforated edges and a payroll smell. "Cash handling error, corporate remedial credit," the note said in a tone that was trying to be casual about its own guilt. Amount, $212. I held the check in my hand for a long minute. I did not think of groceries or a sweater. I thought of Lila in the second row. I thought of June's no-nonsense voice. I thought of the young mother bouncing her baby at the counter, and the teenager with the bored mouth that hadn't told a hard truth yet. I took out my pen and endorsed that check directly over to the senior clinic's fund that covers the $10 copays that multiply like starlings when you're not watching. I walked it to the clinic in person. The receptionist knew my name because her grandmother has the same machine now, and we've compared notes on tubing and courage. "This is for the breath fund," I said. "There's no breath fund," she said, confused. "There is now," I said. "Call it whatever you need to. It is not to resin tam. On my way out, I paused by the bulletin board where people post classes and flyers and polite requests for roommates. A bright green flyer announced a Know Your Meds class every first Wednesday. I pulled down a pen attached to the desk by a silver chain and wrote my name on the sign-up sheet. In the margin, I wrote, "Bring a friend, bring a list, bring a refusal." That night, I slept with the window open an inch, in defiance of March and men who think age is a reason to ban wind. You want the part where Carl comes around and apologizes in a way that feels earned. I'm not sure I have that for you yet. What I have is a letter he left on my porch without knocking. He wrote, "Mom, I read the report. I'm not going to pretend I understand it all, but I know what it feels like to run out of air. I was 8 and you pounded my back when that penny lodged in my throat at Mackenzie's store. The pharmacist in that building gave you water. You didn't thank him, you just held me. You were right to hold me. It is the first good letter I have had from my son in 20 years. I put it in the history folder, yes, but under a paperclip with his boyhood drawings, not above. You also want the part where the pharmacist loses his job. I don't know. I do know that for 3 Saturdays after the board's letter, I watched from my car with coffee in hand while older women and men came and went without hurry and glass faces, and came out again with their heads high and their bags small. Maybe it was coincidence. Maybe it was the mist in my own chest, finally clearing enough for me to see. I could end here on a tidy note, the way certain writers wrap the bow so tight you forget bows are supposed to be loosened. But a week after the check and the letter and the clinic and the library, I bought a small, screw-top tin of marigold seeds at the hardware store. I stood in my backyard wearing a hat with a brim wide as an argument and pressed the seeds into stubborn earth. My knees hurt. I did it anyway. I like marigolds for the way they refuse to apologize for their color and for the way they keep certain pests away with a scent that isn't sweet, exactly, but effective. That was the week I took away their things, not their breath, not their dignity. Those were never mine to take. I took away their access, their assumed place at my table, their easy reach into my wallet, their numbers on my accounts, their expectation that my silence would wrap around their comfort like foam. I took away the habit of calling harm confusion. I took away the door they kept inviting themselves through without knocking. I kept other things. I kept the kettle and its whistle, like a small, bright argument with the air. I kept the machine that sounds like the sea when I'm already half asleep. I kept Ruby's drawing on my wall. I kept a chair pulled out in my kitchen for anyone who arrives with truth in their hands. I kept my little list, the one on the fridge, underneath the magnet shaped like a pear. Breath, bank, boundaries. Yesterday, Ruby asked if I wanted to visit her school's art show. "There's a piece with marigolds," she said. "They made me think of you." We stood in the gymnasium between a papier-mâché dragon and a relief of the town bridge fashioned out of tiny folded receipts. Her piece was their bright, stubborn flowers pushing up through a narrow crack in the sidewalk. People had stopped to look and then kept moving because beauty makes some folks uncomfortable when it looks like persistence instead of a sunset. "That week," Ruby said quietly, "you took away their permission to be careless with you." "That week," I said, "I took away my own willingness to live on thin air." We went for lemonade after. The girl behind the counter gave us each a straw like a tiny flag. We clinked our paper cups together like we'd won a prize. Maybe we had. Not a lawsuit, not a viral clip. The quiet prize of staying. The ordinary trophy of breath. On the walk back to the car, Ruby touched my arm. "You know what's wild?" "What?" "You didn't just make noise," she said. "You made room." That night, before bed, I opened the window the same inch and turned off the light. In the soft dark, I could hear steady traffic far away like a careful tide. The small, cheerful argument the crickets have with the concept of winter, and something else, a wet, new sound, almost too small to be believed. I went outside in my slippers and stood by the patch where I had pressed the seeds. The garden was black except for the pale suggestion of moon at the fence. I knelt, my hands burrowing into earth that had kept secrets longer than I've been alive. The smell of it was a gospel. I pressed my ear toward the ground like a kid. Silly, maybe, but it felt right. The sound didn't come from below. It came from within me, and from the little leaves I couldn't see yet, and from the quiet law of the world that says not everything needs permission to continue in the direction of light. In the morning, the first green tips were there, no bigger than a fingernail, pushing up with the certainty of a promise that doesn't care whether anyone believes it. I made coffee. I breathed. I called the independent pharmacy to thank them for the way they speak to lungs they don't own. Then I called the library to reserve the room for the first Wednesday again. And after I hung up, I wrote one more thing at the bottom of my list, under the pear magnet, in a hand steadier than last week's. Keep the door open, but only for people who knock. I looked at it, a long time. Then I put on my cardigan with the moons and the shoes that make me brave, and I went out to my porch to sit in the honest sun like a woman who remembers the exact size of her breath and is unwilling to barter it again for anyone's comfort.